Welcome to the show some people call football hell. I'm your host, Bo Bayman. This is Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Our analysts, as always, Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou and Dave Matter of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And Derek Dooley said the Missouri Tigers are in football hell after losing again.
So is everybody watching.
Yeah, no kidding. After losing again to Florida this week, the Tigers dropped their fourth in a row, 23-6, the final score. In a game, to me, it turned on one play, and it was the 6-3 right after halftime. You're about to get a 15-yard penalty, and Albert O kind of pulls a guy off the pile, sort of, gets that foul, and it negates everything, and all of a sudden, everything went Florida's way.
Absolutely. And what he did, I think the instinct is natural. It is he's looking out for his teammate. He didn't like the guy on the sideline that just hit his quarterback, so I don't even know if it was the same guy. I think it was just a different guy. And he just pulled him off. He didn't throw a punch. Nope. He didn't suplex him or anything like that. But you can't do that. You can't do that if you're Albert O. You can't do that if you're Missouri. You can't do that in front of the officials. That's kind of this team right there. That's summed up. You just can't do that in that situation when you actually have some momentum for once.
It was 6-3 at that point, and from there it just went all downhill, and Florida made a couple of plays that it needed to.
And I agreed that was the biggest play of the game, but I know this sounds stupid, but I literally thought that game was over after Missouri's first offensive series. It's 3-0, and they come out, screen pass for -3 yards, incomplete pass. And I said at that point, this isn't an offense that's going to change anything. It's not an offense that's figured anything out. They can't score 10 points, and they didn't.
And I just cannot figure out what has gone wrong with this team. The last time we saw them at Faurot Field, they're running up and down the field on Ole Miss, and now they don't have any receivers that are doing anything. They got tight ends dropping the ball. They can't run the ball. It's just a hot mess.
Yeah, I thought Saturday was an offensive line problem as much as anything. I mean, they hit one deep pass down 44 yards to Jalen
Which was
Knox.
a terribly thrown pass.
Not a very good thrown ball. But Kelly had time on that one to complete the pass. The receiver got downfield. Every other time he was running for his life in the pocket. He was sacked, 3 times? It could have been 10. I mean, That's how much he had to run. And sometimes he runs before he needs to. I thought in this case, as soon as he caught the ball, he had to. He was just getting no protection at all.
Absolutely. And when you have no protection, it also means you have no run game. And they had no run game.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Roundtree averaged 4.3 yards a carry, which is not great, but it's not bad. He had 7 carries. Here's what I don't understand. 1 week, Barry Odom tells us we got to force the ball to Albert O. He gets 1 target that week. Last week, we're going to have to use Larry more down the stretch. 7 carries.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it wasn't working great, but again, and this is why I'm not a big pile on the play calling guy, because I think that's a crutch usually after losses. But 3 weeks in a row, this team's game plan should have been run the ball as many times as we have to and give the other team 9 possessions. Just limit the number of times they can score. Keep our defense, which is pretty good, fresh, and they're going to make plays. And that hasn't been it. Now, Derek Dooley did say on Tuesday that of the first 50 plays they called, 23 of them, I think, were run plays or run-pass options. And Kelly Bryant opted to pass. I don't know. Do you maybe just take that option away? Do you say, no, we're not doing that? But that's offense these days. It's dictated on if there's this many guys in the box, we throw the football.
Right.
That's fine, but you still can't do it.
And after 3 drives, if he's throwing too much, you can just call running plays. I mean, you can adjust and change that. Maybe they did. Maybe, I don't know. There's a disconnect there, obviously. I mean, I don't think these coaches are that dumb that they can watch this offense and be like, well, that's what we wanted.
Yeah, we ought to throw more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to the line with it, RPO, you're supposed to look at the defense, you read it, and you go, okay, here we go. And it's just not working.
And the other question is Bryant making the right reads on it? Because look, the fairest criticism of Kelly Bryant is he's not a fast decision maker, and he's not really a very good decision maker.
Let's talk about the defense, the good side of the ball. I thought they played for really the 3rd week in a row. They played their hearts out. They did what they could to keep the offense in the game, and just not enough.
You hold 2 top 10 teams to 2 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. Normally that's enough in today's college football, but with this offense, it's not. And I think this defense is now at the point, and Ryan Walters said it this week, he said, if our guys on defense, if we get a hand on the ball, we have to intercept it. There's no more knocking down passes. And that's the sign of a team that knows they're getting zero help from their offense. And it's a shame because they had some great plays where they made a play on the ball right there, but if they don't catch it, it doesn't mean anything pretty much.
There was a pick six that Nick Bolton would have had.
And Khalil Oliver maybe had an intercept. Like, I think that's still a debatable call.
Yeah.
But the problem is, so what if they make that play?
Right.
Like, it's at the 10-yard line. Missouri's not going 90 yards. Bolton's pick six would have made it 13-10. Okay, so you lose 23-10 because you're not getting 13 because this offense is simply not functional.
And they can't even luck into a long play. I mean, they had one long play that I remember, and that's it.
It was a nice drive. It started up. They had a play-action pass for like 22 yards to start that, and then the 44-yarder, get into the red zone, and they still have to settle for a field goal.
And there were, because I watched that game on TV, and you get some of the wide angle. I mean, there were a couple, and I understand Brian didn't have a lot of time, but I know there was one play in particular where Dom Jacinto ran kind of a deep in, I mean, just right down the middle of the field. He is alone for the entire route, and Kelly Bryant was looking to the other side of the field and threw into coverage. I mean, and it happens a fair amount.
Absolutely, and when you can't protect, you can't go to those receivers because then you start running. Back to defense, if they don't score, they're still doing their job. I mean, to me, there was a couple of drives, that's it, that they gave up to Florida, and Florida's ranked in the top 10 in the country.
How much, though, remember in 2015, we had this discussion, Missouri's defense is really good, but we were always talking, but is it because other teams just know all they have to do is score 9 points? Now, I think this is a legitimately good Missouri defense, but, you know, Georgia and Florida both are just going, I mean, all we're going to have to do is score 17 and this game's over.
Right. And they gave up 4 sacks, Florida did, so they were never really in control of that game offensively. I mean, they only had 6 points at halftime, and, you know, they weren't getting the big chunk plays at all, except for the 2 touchdowns. Other than that, you know, they really had to labor to get up and down the field, which is a credit to Missouri's defense. But again, not enough.
And again, to Gabe's point, it's probably one of those things. Hey, let's hit one drive and we can win this game, even when it's 6-3. You're like, let's hit a touchdown and we can be done. So the thing that all the fans want. Ask him about his future. Ask Barry Odom what's he going to... Well, you did yesterday.
I did. Didn't really get much of an answer, which I didn't expect. I mean,
right.
And this goes back to everybody says, you know, well, you guys won't ask the hard question. Look, it's not a real comfortable thing to be either the person that asks or the person that answers, are you going to get fired? You know, so I didn't expect a great answer. He pointed out the positives and people get mad about that. Well, what's he supposed to do? Right. Say, yeah, man, I've been pretty bad. I'd probably think about firing. He's not going to say that. I got a statement from Jim Sturk, which I could not possibly have said less. I mean, it just recapped what Barry has done in 4 years. I'm like, no, I already knew that. Like, I've seen it. I don't need that in a statement.
So the Tigers are now 5-5. They have Tennessee at home. They play at Little Rock against Arkansas. The question is, if they go 0-2, 1-1, 2-0, it's really going to change the whole outlook of what happens, maybe with this entire program.
It will. I still think if you're the AD, you have to have a pretty good idea going into these games what your thought is on the future. I mean, you know, if they win or lose a game on a overtime field goal, does that change your opinion on the head coach?
Right.
It shouldn't. It should be more about what he's doing to get you there and what you believe he can do in the future and what kind of resources you have to improve the program if you think he's not the right option. So yes, these games they matter, obviously. You know, 5-7 is a really bad look, especially if that means you lose to a really bad Arkansas team. But I've got to think that Jim Sturk has an idea in his mind right now what he wants to do going forward.
The other thing you've got to have an idea on is, if I'm going to do this, do I know I have a guy who, look, there's no guarantees, but who I think is better and who the fans are going to think is better. And I understand the people out there, well, anybody's better. Well, no, not anybody's better. You know, if you go out and 6 weeks ago, everybody wanted to hire Alex Grinch. I mean, Alex Grinch is Barry Odom 4 years ago. Right. He's got a couple more years of experience, but it's the same type of deal. So if you're going to go into this, you've got to have had somebody tell you, yes, I don't even know who you necessarily want, but yes, Luke Fickell would take that job if you were to offer it to him, or, you know, this coach or that coach. But if you're going out there and you fire Barry Odom and what you end up with is a guy who's coached 1 year at Appalachian State, like, I don't care what fans say, that's not selling season tickets, that's not fixing anything.
And you always have to wonder about the budget and, buyouts and all that stuff. You have to wonder about.
I mean, it's important here. Maybe it's not at Florida State. Maybe it's not at a place where you can find the money to pay a major buyout and then pay more money for your next coach and give him a huge buyout too. That's just not the way you can operate at Missouri right now. So that is absolutely has to be a factor.
All right, so the Tigers are 5-5, as we said, 2-4. The other games that went on in the SEC, the big one really was Georgia holding off Auburn and taking control of the East. And, the Bulldogs still number 4. They're going to get their chance against LSU, and that's going to be a de facto quarterfinal game.
I mean, the SEC is actually going to want Georgia to win that game because if Georgia does, they probably got 2 teams in the playoff. The interesting part of that to me is, I think once again, here we are. Gus Malzahn might get fired at Auburn. He's gonna go 8-4 and get fired because he's not Nick Saban. That's what it would ultimately come down to. And if that happens, I think there's a pretty decent chance Missouri's playing him every year, because I think Arkansas will hire him.
It could be. I mean, I don't know. I think if I'm him and I have a choice, I'd rather be at Florida State than at Arkansas, where you're playing for 5th place every year.
You think Florida State hires him though? Because I'm not sure they will.
I would.
Yeah, I think he's a good coach.
Yeah.
One more thing, is there going to be a fall guy? If Barry Odom keeps his job, then there's probably a fall guy down the line, right? Potentially. Everything's
it's
on
kind
the
of
table.
how these things tend to go.
Yeah.
But again, the popular fall guy is Derek Dooley. And like Davis pointed out, 6 weeks ago, everybody loved Derek Dooley.
Right. Yeah.
But second of all, okay, so Derek Dooley's the fall guy. So now you had a nightmare of a time hiring an offensive coordinator. There's a reason he's your OC to begin with. So you're going to do it again and say, oh, hey, look, no doubt, I'm on the hottest seat in the SEC, but please come work.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's easier said than done to do these things, so we'll see.
All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, all your tweets, we'll check the old tweet machine. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines, everybody. Dave Matter, Gabe DeArmond, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks for joining us on MC22 as we do our show every week, except for next week. We'll take the week off for Thanksgiving, so we'll be back in a couple of weeks to recap everything that's gone on at the end of the football season. We're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter, and Mike has our first one. He says, same stuff, different day. Defense does good on discipline. O-line, I have nothing nice, and the offense isn't good, but keep Odom for some reason. When is progress going to happen? Why should he be the guy? Any logical reason behind that?
The one thing that we're ignoring here is progress did happen the last 2 years. Now, this is a step back. There's no question this is a step back. But it's a step back because it's not like he was 4-8, 4-8, 3-9, 5-7. They got better, and now they're worse. So it really comes down to me, does Missouri get to fire a guy for one bad year?
Right. I mean, you look at a lot of great coaches, and I'm not saying this is what they should do necessarily, but a lot of great coaches get mulligan years. You know, you can have a bad year. Gary Pinkel had a really bad year in 2004, and they bounced back after that. Now, that's not saying it's going to happen here necessarily, but are we at the point now where you're making steady progress and then you slip up for whatever reason? I'm sure we'll find some reasons. If he keeps his job, we'll hear the reasons why afterwards. Does that mean you're automatically gone? He didn't. The problem is he didn't build up enough equity in those first 3 years. He just didn't do that with some losses that are going to sit with people for a long time.
I think the other thing that people look at is there's no Drew Lock in the cupboard. That's
part of it.
Who's going to play that position next year? That's a big one. Bob says the defense was closer to scoring 6 than the offense. Lack of execution and discipline again at critical times. Will a player or two step into the void and help propel this team to a winning season? Will they need to come from the offensive side of the ball?
Who?
I mean, if they were going to, you would think they would have at some point. I mean, ultimately, it kind of has to be Kelly Bryant, right?
Yeah.
Something has to happen on offense, and he's the guy to make it happen.
Right.
And this is a game, this Tennessee game, they're better than Kentucky and Vanderbilt, who Missouri lost to. They're not as good as Georgia and Florida.
And they're not as good as Kentucky on defense, I don't think.
No, they're not. They have been lately. They've been playing better. Their offense doesn't scare me. They got some good receivers, but it's definitely a winnable game for Missouri. But which Missouri are you going to get? If they can't move the ball, they can't beat anyone.
If you can't find the end zone against this Tennessee team, just don't play offense against
Mail it in.
Arkansas.
Yeah, Steven says, I like Bazelak. He looked good in the Georgia game. One thing I did notice, obviously with Kelly playing the whole game, we talked about it last week, Connor could play in the last two and still have his red shirt. So, I mean, it's out there.
I mean, I said I'd start him in the last two. I know they won't. I would, because it's not worse. But the guy that we haven't seen fail is always the most popular guy.
Right.
We've seen Kelly Bryant fail. We've seen Taylor Powell fail. If Connor Bazelak plays, at some point, we're going to see him fail. And then at that point, it will be like Sean Robinson right now he's the greatest quarterback
gold.
that's ever played football because we have no proof to the other
It works
side.
backwards, too. Hindsight, now Drew Lock was also the greatest quarterback ever at Missouri.
Odds that Dooley will be the OC next season.
I mean, it's hard to say.
It's not going to shock me if he isn't.
No, it's not.
You know?
I don't think any. I mean, here's the change, though. This question was very popular for about 12 months.
The other way.
Up until 6 weeks ago, because it was who's going to hire him. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone is now.
Where's he going to go be a head coach? D Squared says, Mizzou football, what happens if no decision is received from the NCAA by December 1st and the Tigers are not bowl eligible in 2019, meaning they lose their final two, but a decision denying Mizzou appeal is received in December? Is the bowl ban in place for next season?
As far as his question, it doesn't really matter what the record is. If the decision isn't in by December 1st, I haven't had anybody tell me this, but I just assume then the bowl ban would go for 2020 if they uphold it,
I mean,
right?
it's a one-year bowl ban. It's not necessarily for this year. Yeah, they just have to serve it at some point.
But what fans need to understand is they're saying, well, we're not going to make a bowl game anyway, so can't we just take that? Well, there's a lot of other things involved with this appeal, and it's not about winning enough games to be in a bowl game. It's about being deemed eligible so you can get that $9 million check from the SEC. And if you're ineligible, it doesn't matter what your record is, you don't get that money. If you're eligible, even if you're 3 and not, like Vanderbilt is getting that money this year.
Right.
And the other part is, it's a smaller part, is you have baseball and softball to think about.
Right.
So you can't just say, well, the heck with it for football because it.
And recruiting restrictions, and they've spent $550,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't pull back an appeal. It's too late at this point. I mean, nobody likes waiting this long, but you can't say, oh, never mind. We're
good.
that.
And that does become interesting to me because the day we're taping this, if the NCAA doesn't have a decision or doesn't tell Missouri, hey, it's coming within a week today, I mean, it's not coming out on Thanksgiving.
Right.
Nope.
The regular season will be over before this is decided if they don't get word today.
All right, and December 1st isn't the cutoff either. It should be, the championship game is what, December 7th? So it would be the Friday before. I think it's the last day because bowl announcements will come out December 8th.
But you know that these bowl reps are, I mean, because Georgia LSU doesn't affect Missouri.
Right.
So you know there are bowl reps out there going, hey, what can we do with the rest of these teams? The Liberty Bowl can go ahead and fill their spots unofficially. Well, they can't do that if they don't know who's available because it also comes down to how many SEC teams are available. And if Missouri's eligible or not eligible, then they've got to go to a different conference to fill that.
Ken, that 7-foot guy currently on the Mizzou men's basketball roster, redshirt.
I don't know, but I don't know why you would. I mean, honestly, he's talking about Axel Okongo. The fact that we're just calling him that 7-foot guy is, but I thought it was not necessarily a positive when they got the extra year of eligibility.
Right, yeah. I mean,
He's just tying up scholarships.
And if he doesn't contribute this year, then maybe you don't even need him next year. And they can say, hey, buddy, it was nice having you, but
Thanks for being here. How likely is it Jordan Elliott leaves a year early?
I think he's got a decision to make, for sure. I mean, why wouldn't he? He's one of the best defensive tackles in the SEC.
I mean, I think we agreed despite this year, Albert's gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be shocked if he's back.
I don't think he's getting the first or second round grade. It's just a matter of him not caring.
I think somebody's still going to draft him in by the end of the second round. I think they
NFL?
will end up unhappy that they did it, but I think they're going to do it.
Am I the only one that Matt Rule not being offered the job is strange while the same AD went to Baylor and Matt Rule was hired? Why can't Mizzou ever have nice things? What can change that? Or will Mizzou always be a program that 7 wins is the best? If so, why continue
They
to
won
follow?
8 last year. So, no, 7 is not the best. But
Missouri wanted Matt Rule. Mike Rhodes did.
I believe it was reported at the time, and I don't remember if either of us did or other people did, Matt Rule was offered the job.
He didn't want it.
Yeah.
He said no. He spent 1 more year at Temple, and then he took the Baylor job for the same AD that he didn't take the Missouri job, and that right there tells you everything you need to know about what the job was in 2015.
It's not about what it is now. It's about what it was in 2015. It was toxic. Nobody was touching it.
Nobody was taking it.
Is Dave going to fire Odom in order to hire Nick Saban, who is clearly on the hot seat? How would he seal the deal? With CJ's Booches or an old cardboard cutout of Doug Smith circa 91?
All of that, yes.
Yeah. That's how you get somebody here.
Do you think Nick Saban's like, oh, these Bucci's burgers? I'm here, man. I'm leaving Bama. I'm coming to Como.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll talk a little bit more basketball when we come back. This is Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back to Tiger Sidelines. Dave Matter, Gabe DeArmond, and I'm Bo Bayman. Men's basketball team bounces back after its loss to Xavier, beating Wofford 75-56 with a big second half. The Tigers now 3-1, and really in that second half, I thought buckled down and played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, when you don't allow a field goal for 14 minutes and 30-something seconds, I mean, that's hard to do against anybody. Columbia College could come over and play against Missouri. They could get a bucket in 15 minutes. That's hard to do, and some of it's just that missed shots, but Missouri's defense had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely, and this team is getting better and better, I think, Gabe. I know it's only 4 games, but you see progress.
Yeah, I mean, they are, right now, they are elite defensively. I mean, nobody scored more than 56 in regulation. Xavier needed overtime to get to 63. So, you know, I find it interesting, like all the talk all offseason about how this team maybe was going to look to. No, this is a Conzo Martin team, and that's okay. This isn't a criticism, but this is what this team is going to be. They are going to win with defense. I mean, Conzo said in the post-game press conference, like, I don't look at offensive stats. He doesn't care. He does not care if you can play offense. So that's what this team's going to be. Now, I think, and I understand why it is. Football's bad. Everybody had high hopes coming into this season. We're getting a little high after. I mean, yeah, the Wofford win's nice. Northern Kentucky's okay. But they've played one team that I feel like is probably a tournament team, and they lost. Yeah. So they played 3 of the worst, 12 games on their schedule so far.
At the same time, look around the SEC. Everybody else is losing to worse teams than Missouri has played. So they don't have a big blemish on their record yet.
I guess my point is I've seen nothing to, whatever you thought of this team before the season, I've seen nothing so far that would change that positively or negatively.
You probably will see that with Morehead State.
Yeah, they seem like a very good team. Yeah.
Then there's Butler next week.
Butler on Monday is a test.
Yeah. Is that a test?
They're not I mean, they're not a top 25 team this year, but they're borderline.
They are. I mean, according to the Ken Palm rankings, they're are
right there.
They're above Missouri. They're right around Xavier. Oklahoma's actually above Missouri in those rankings, which surprised me.
So there you go, and that'll be a good 2 days really for that team in Kansas City, just to kind of get a barometer of where they're at. And then, of course, you have the Thanksgiving break. Then you get into December. You'll have finals, and then it's pretty much full-on basketball.
Yeah, they go to Temple in December, which is kind of like the Xavier game. They're not as good as Xavier, but you're going on the road, you know, in a strange environment. I mean, Xavier, Missouri's played at before, not Temple. That's a good test, and obviously, you know, Illinois closer to Christmas.
Absolutely. All right, the women's basketball team off to a really tough start.
Yeah.
They're 1-3, the worst in Robin Pinchton's era here at Mizzou, and they've dropped some games in overtime. They probably shouldn't have lost the one to Nebraska. They missed free throws, and Nebraska sends it to overtime. And then they went on the road to Green Bay, and they lost to Green Bay by about 8. And like I said,
I think they're about to be 1-4 because don't they play South Dakota here in the next few days? Right. And that's like not a team that you would think is good, but they're a pretty good. They're better than a couple of the teams that beat Missouri.
So it's a tough start as they're trying to. Everybody says, oh, it's post Sophie and all that. It's a bunch of new players who are trying to come together and gel a little bit.
It's Amber Smith, who's an all-SEC player. It's 2 talented freshmen who look like freshmen a lot, and then it's a bunch of complementary pieces who have to start now.
And, I mean, Conzo's team played great defense. This team plays no defense. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to score 80 to win almost any game.
No size at all.
No size again. All right, the volleyball 1-2, beating Alabama and South Carolina. The Tigers are now 18-6, 10-4. They're ranked number 18. I mean, this is a tournament team. And we should mention that Josh Taylor had the interim tag removed in her ceremony at practice, and he's now the head man.
And on Twitter. Ceremony on Twitter.
So the volleyball team still has as we were talking, a couple of weeks left, and then it'll be postseason time.
Yeah, not a big surprise they took that off. I think they're a competent program. I don't know if they'd be much better if Wayne Kreklow was coaching them, and I think Josh was kind of the natural pick. And now Jim Stark doesn't have to go out and have a coaching search, at least for volleyball.
For that. Yeah.
Wrestling dropped duels to Virginia Tech and Illinois. They're 0-2 as they return home. And finally, let's go back to football. What does Missouri need to do besides score to beat Tennessee?
Score at least once, whether it's offense, defense, or special team. I mean, it doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter if it's 3-2 or 98-6. Like, they got to win a game.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't go to Little Rock saying, we need this one to keep this thing going.
Because that win shouldn't even count. Now, look, if you can lose to Vandy, you can lose to anybody. That is a losable game. But if you go beat Arkansas, I don't even care. Like that, to me, this game's the season because the Arkansas game doesn't matter.
And also knowing this team, if they let's say they beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns, they'll probably just waltz into Little Rock thinking this will be easy.
And they shouldn't beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns because, they're probably only going to score 2. So if they score 1, they should save 1 for next week, and maybe that'll help them beat Arkansas.
It'd be interesting to see this team score first because I can't remember the last time they've led a game. Did they lead at Vandy?
I don't think they ever. They were tied at Vandy, but I don't think they ever led.
So it was probably Ole Miss.
It was Ole Miss.
Football Hill, man.
It is football hill.
Well, and this is Derek Dooley against Tennessee. Nobody talked about that yesterday.
Oh no,
I'm not sure players even know that at this point. They did last year when he went to Knoxville. It was a big deal. Not so much this year.
We'll see what happens, and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. Remember, we're off next week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks to recap the final 2 games and talk about the basketball teams as well. For Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter, behind the scenes is Brian, Bill, and Matt. I'm Bo Bayman. We'll see you next time on Tiger Sidelines on MC22.